From Wana Brands, welcome to Enhance Your Life. I'm your host, Jonathan Small, and each week I talk to people from all sorts of professions and backgrounds about how cannabis has enhanced their lives and how this healing plant can enrich your life too. Hey everybody, welcome to the Enhance Your Life podcast. My name is Jonathan Small and I am your host. We have a really interesting podcast episode today. Great guest. Philip Wolf will join us in just a second. Philip is the CEO and founder of Cultivating Spirits. He is a longtime cannabis consumer, but he started Cultivating Spirits in 2014, and it's the first company ever in the U.S. to offer a cannabis pairing experience, somewhat like a wine pairing experience. And they just celebrated their 7th anniversary a few weeks ago. Philip also started the Cannabis Wedding Expo, which he will talk to you about. It's a sales event full of ways for pot enthusiasts to incorporate the plant into their very special wedding day. Philip is a certified weed sommelier. And Philip, welcome to the podcast.
John, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So lots to talk about. First of all, let's talk about Cultivating Spirits and what it means to do cannabis pairings. Talk a little bit about the origin story of how that started and then what it is exactly.
Yeah, great question, man. Gosh, I wish I could give the whole story on this podcast right now, but we could have a fireside chat with what led me down this road.
Right.
But essentially, I started dispensaries in Colorado Springs in 2009 when kind of the medical boom took off in Colorado. And then I became a really good cultivator for a number of years and did consulting around that, gearing up for legalization. And then as we were getting ready for recreational cannabis shops to open, I started working on a lot of ancillary businesses after meeting some people. And one of the things we really took to was tourism. And I really enjoyed that idea of cannabis tourism. And at the time, there was only My 420 tours around. After being at a wine tasting in Barcelona at the end of 2013, a couple of weeks before recreational shops opened, I was sitting at this dinner and I was like, it doesn't matter who you are in the world, whether you drink wine or not, you want to be sitting at this dinner table right now. And it was really about back then, and it still sort of is how do we tap into the soccer mom? How do we tap into the mainstream consumer? And I was like, I need to recreate this, but for cannabis. And at that time, I didn't really have the view of what this could potentially turn into. I just thought it was a way to really tap into a different type of consumer and to show them a way that they can experience this plant to enhance their life,
Yeah.
And as I started messing around with wine style cannabis experiences, this is when I discovered terpenes. And in 2014, nobody knew anything about terpenes. I found very little on it. And I grew up for a number of years without knowing about terpenes. And I realized when I started putting together some of these concepts around pairings that you could actually break this down into a science with terpenes in food. And that blew my mind. I was like, wow, this really legitimizes it. When at first I just thought it might be something we could have fun with names and things of that nature. And then I was like, wow, you could actually break this down into a science. And then I learned about how terpenes give you the type of feeling that you have whenever you consume cannabis. And it wasn't just THC. And that really blew my mind because all of a sudden we could identify these aromas and identify these terpenes, and you could actually predict what type of feeling you have or what type of high you're going to have before you even consume.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Not only did I see we could break this down in like a science to legitimize what we're doing, we actually gave people an amazing tool for them to be able to use their senses and identify how they're going to feel before they even consume. And if you're able to understand that, then all of a sudden you can consume something that's really going to enhance that experience or enhance your life, like we like to say in this podcast. And so once that happened, my mind just started going berserk on these ideas, and Cultivating Spirits came to life. And we've been doing these dinners for over 7 years now.
So let's explain to our listeners, in case they don't know what terpenes are, without getting too sciencey about it, but tell us a little bit about what terpenes are really the essence, right, of the plant, and talk a little bit about what a terpene is.
Yeah, you could say that it's the essence of the plant, or, one of the more important factors of it. Essentially, terpenes are organic compounds that exist not only in cannabis, but it's all fruits and vegetables and flowers. Everything has terpenes in it. And in the natural world, they produce the aromas. So what you're smelling are the terpenes. The plant uses those aromas to attract pollinators, detract predators, right? But it also uses them to help with internal diseases and stuff that it may get. And so whenever humans consume it, and with cannabis, it gives us the type of feeling that we want to have. And it can also help with medical aspects of life as well. But we really like to focus on the lifestyle aspects of it, really enhancing your day-to-day activities. And so THC gives you the euphoric effect. It's what makes you feel high. Terpenes are what gives you the type of feeling that you have, whether it be creative, relaxed, energizing, stimulating, whatever that is, that's driven by the terpenes, along with obviously the THC and cannabinoids that we know a little bit more about. But it's really that mood is really determined by the terpene profile.
Right. And the terpenes have names like limonene and...
Yeah, so there's like a dominant 16 terpenes, and limonene and myrcene and caryophyllene are some of the things that you'll hear of pretty commonly, linalool. But each strain has a multitude of terpenes in it. And so that's why you get these complex smells with cannabis. There's a lot of layers to that. And that's basically broken down into different terpenes and then different amounts of each of those terpenes that exist within the strain. So a real simple way to think about it, if you don't want to learn about limonene and myrcene and what all these things are, if it smells grounding, it smells dirty, if it smells like it's grown close to the earth, it's going to be more of a sedative type of feeling.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to have terpenes that exist within that. If it's more citrus based, if it smells like it's grown higher off of the earth, like limes and lemons and mangoes and things like that, it's going to be a lot more energizing.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And it's fascinating how you can look at these like synchronicities. Now, this isn't tried and true factual information, but if you start learning about terpenes and you identify what in the natural world has those aromas, and then you start looking at where that's grown at in relationship to the earth, you can actually get some sort of barometer of energetics with that, which when I discovered this, I had a couple of glasses of wine with some friends who actually don't consume cannabis, and I put that together, and you should have seen how blown my mind was. And the people are looking at me like, what the hell are you
What's in that wine? I want to have what he's having. Yeah. So take me through what a pairing would look like. Like, so is everybody sitting around a table? Like, I know how it looks with wine, but do you also have the food prepared? Like, how is this? Play it all out for me. Like, I'm a customer. How does it work?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first off, this is the culinary arts, and it's the culinary arts for a reason, because you can create the experience however you want to. So what we do is how we like to create the experience, but just know, like, have fun with this. You can take it in a lot of different ways. Now, what we do at Cultivating Spirits is it's like a smoke, eat, drink sort of concept, right? So we're doing tastings first. Our goal is for the terpenes to enhance the flavors of the food. And so everyone will sit down at the dinner table. We'll take you through a tasting of how you can properly, and I use the word proper very loosely because, again, taste how you want to taste, but we kind of have a process in which we get people to really experience the overall flavor and identify different aspects of it. And then we will serve out courses and essentially dropping cannabis while we're dropping courses of food. So people can do a tasting of that strain that's paired prior to eating that dish. And we'll take you through a couple of courses and have a lot of fun with it.
You talk to the customers or the clients about what they're experiencing or what the different blends are and how it may make you feel?
Yeah, my goal going into this is to give people an overarching idea that you can treat cannabis like this. For me, with the beginner consumers, it's important to really just set this kind of foundation of knowledge before, again, we get super deep into limonene and stuff like that. Because just like wine, it's an acquired taste. It's acquired to get your palette of aromas down, and it takes time to do this. And so to be able to do that all in the first, dinner is really, really tough. And so my goal, because cannabis is still so new, is to really give them an overarching understanding of how you can treat cannabis and how you can look at cannabis. And then we've done some repeat dinners where we'll get into more of the technicalities and more of people's experiences. And we're still scratching the surface of where we can actually take these experiences, which is amazing.
Yeah. So are there like little rolled joints that you pass out between the courses?
Well, we give everyone their own pipe, their own lighter. Yeah. We old school. Sometimes we work with hemp wicks and stuff like that. That's a pure way to taste it. But even that can be a little too heady sometimes for our customer base that we bring in. And, most of the people we serve are not from legal states.
Right. So they're just kind of blown away by the whole thing.
Yeah. What we know as, I don't know if you're a daily consumer or not, but probably somewhat frequently consumer, there's a lot of these things that aren't so nuanced to you, but people coming from illegal states, I mean, it's still, some of this stuff is the mind-blowing stuff still, So we like to do pipes and lighters at this point in time. It also allows you to get the overall taste better, because you can easily ash it out, load more, continue to taste it, where a joint, that flavor has a lifespan to it as the smoke's filtering through the rest of the joint.
I would imagine what's a little different than a wine pairing is that you can take a little sip of wine and it tastes good, but you might not really feel the effects that strongly unless you drink a lot of it. But with cannabis can be different, right? Like I would imagine that you could get pretty high doing this if you're, because, for some people it's just like one puff and they're like, whoa, okay, feeling kind of high. So how do you titrate that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we first started off by asking about people's experience to really understand the crowd that we have in front of us. And then we encourage people for them to check into their body and what they're looking for, and for them to decide how much they want to consume. And I actually preach to say, hey, take one hit with each course. This isn't about mass consumption. This is about enjoying your experience, and don't feel like you actually even need to consume to enjoy this at the same time. If this isn't going to serve you, for 10 people sitting down at a dinner table, it's hard to believe that every single one of those people want the exact same experience, right? So it makes sense that one person doesn't want to consume or something like that. That's just the law of numbers, maybe, or something like that. So yeah, that's how we regulate it essentially is to really put it into the people's hands themselves, but ask them to be honest with themselves and check in with themselves. We give them an idea of the types of feelings the different strains may have. And so things that are more stimulating, it has a more of an opportunity to make people feel anxious, which that you don't want that experience at a dinner table. So we might say, hey, if you ever do feel anxiety from cannabis, maybe wait till the next strain, but we also explain to them that the setting of this is very comfortable. It's your friends and things like that. And so it's going to be less likely that you're going to get these kind of paranoid feelings when you're in that type of setting.
Right. Everybody's in it together.
Yeah. There's a number of factors, and you'd actually be surprised by how many people have never smoked before or haven't smoked since they were like in high school, and they actually come and they say that they're not going to consume, but they're just going to enjoy the meal with their friends, and then they end up taking a hit, because they do feel so comfortable in it. So yeah, that's how we treat it. And because you're right, with wine you can taste it, and a lot of people actually spit it out.
Right, and the tastings, yeah. You can't really spit out
No,
cannabis.
But you don't have to inhale if you don't want to, which we really haven't had that. But a lot of the people will still just break up the terpenes and get their nose in there and get an idea of the smells and stuff like that. So I do feel like it's beneficial for them, even if they're not consuming.
Well, let's talk about certain pairings that have worked for you. I'm thinking I probably shouldn't start with dessert, but I always want to start with dessert because it's my favorite course. It's always my favorite course. But are there certain terpenes that go better with sweet foods? And then, other terpenes that go better with more savory kind of things? I mean, does it depend on exactly give me an example of something that pairs well?
Yeah. Well, I mean, here, I can just read you what we did on March 11th.
Oh, cool. Hot off the presses.
Well, I'll read what we just did, and then I will kind of give you a general rule of thumb, if you will, like if you do red meat with red wine and whatnot. We did a beet carpaccio with homemade creme fresca, mint and spicy oil with Colorado cream soda. We did a fried chicken roulade, potato puree, a mole negro, and a salsa roja with super lemon cheddar. And we did a hibiscus custard brulee, steward apples with the white hot guava. And all of that was cultivated by Diego Pelissar, which is a dispensary in Denver.
And those are strains that you mentioned, like the white hot guava, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so those are what our menus will look like. And like anything, like I said, it's an art. So when we create these, it's, I consider myself a cachom, which is a steward and server of cannabis. And what I'll do is work with the cultivator on what strains are the freshest that will be available, and then trying to get a diverse terpene profile between those strains so we can do our demonstrations better. And then we will collaborate with the chef about the breakdown of the terpenes and the flavors. And then we will get some preferences from our customers and stuff like that about types of food that they like. And then we'll take in consideration what's freshest in the supermarkets,
right.
and what we have access to. And then we'll create the menu. Now, a general rule of thumb with that is you could think of, we don't use indica sativa, but you could do a traditional indica as you would think of it, go really well with red meats, because they're very, the aromas are a lot more groundy and a lot more earthy, spicy types of smells to them and flavors. And, red meat can express that a lot as well. And then you can think of your traditional or historical sativas, the bright citrus.
Like a white wine.
Yeah, like a white wine, which is going to go well with fish and even,
right.
White meat potentially. Something that you could look at it's just the harmonization of nature, right? Traditional indicas are sedative, right? Red meat that you eat is typically going to make you feel a little bit more sedative.
Yeah, exactly.
As well as, traditional historical sativas are going to be more energizing, and you think of, fish dish as a lighter fare, which will leave you more energized after dinner,
Right.
And so there's a lot of little just fun synergies that you can play with, that we figured out over time that you can incorporate into this art.
Now, I said in the intro that you're a weed sommelier, and I don't know if that's the proper term, if it's cannabis sommelier. Is it called a weed sommelier? What is it called?
Well, I'm moving away from that.
Okay.
So I was, Bloomberg did an article on us like 5 or 6 years ago, and it was like the rise of the pot sommelier or something like that. And up until that point, I never considered myself a sommelier, more so just a cannabis host, if you will. Then I adopted that term cannabis sommelier for a number of years because people could make the association with it. And over the past year and a half, I've decided to move away from that term because unfortunately it puts us on the level of alcohol, and in my opinion, it puts us below alcohol since we're mimicking them.
Right.
And this has so much more of an important purpose than alcohol does in our society. And I'm a true believer of that. And so I want to separate myself from the referencing of sommeliers with cannabis. And not to say that wine is great, and there's definitely a place for wine in our culture and stuff like that. And I think the sommeliers are very talented people, and they've allowed me to understand and get a deeper appreciation for wine, which I'm very, very grateful for. But at the same time, cannabis needs to start really forging our own path.
Yeah, I understand.
We always want to make these comparables within our industry, and I think we just need to start going away. Cannabis is cannabis is cannabis. It is not like anything else that we have that's, I guess, modernized. And so alcohol, tea, food, vitamins, none of it. It's cannabis.
Right. So do you serve wine in your pairing, in your dinner, in your special menus, or is it not on the table?
So real quick, just to finish the last thought.
Yeah.
So we're going with cashom, and this is actually
cashom.
something we're designing about the stewardship and service of cannabis. So people will see that coming this fall.
Okay.
It's something I've been working on for 2 years in kind of regards to the 2,500 people I've served in intimate settings. And we have some just brilliant minds who are going to be a part of this project as well. So hopefully we can come back and speak to that more here in 6 months or so.
Yeah.
But in regards to our specific dinners, wine's optional for the customer. it's a BYOB type of setting. We discourage hard alcohol because it can just get a little sloppy sometimes, and we try to stay away from that. But it's up to the person. If they want to enjoy wine at dinner, by no means are we going to slow them down. And I mean, sometimes I have a glass of wine with them. People want to do that at celebratory aspects. And in my opinion, cannabis is the third layer to the dining experience. It's food, it's drink, it's cannabis, and that drink can be anywhere from, wine or sparkling water, or whatever. But, you got to have something there on the table.
Got to have something to drink. Let's talk about the wedding expo. So there's you kind of branched out from the intimate dining experiences, but also into the wedding. And I have, in my other job as an editor-in-chief of Green Entrepreneur, I've written about cannabis weddings and that's an industry now. Talk to me a little bit about what the wedding expo is and how you got into that.
Yeah, so the Cannabis Wedding Expo was birthed in 2015, but we did our first event in January of 2016. And essentially, a dear friend of mine, Beck Coop, was not being accepted for her Buds and Blossoms company at traditional wedding expos in 2015. And we were both young entrepreneurs in the space. And so we would find ourselves in these, just checking in on each other and sharing stories. And I was like, Beck, it's like, just keep taking note with a smile on your face. Like, we're going to have a seat at the table at some point in time. Cause I know what it's like trying to make partnerships and to non-cannabis industries. And it's very, very difficult. And we were the ones pioneering this space. And so many people still are pioneering this space, but, we were a part of that. And so I was just trying to give her some encouragement about, just staying face, if you will, and be ready whenever we do get a seat at the table. And then she's like, well, one of them actually tried to charge me double for a booth because I had cannabis. And within half a second, I was like, fuck them, let's start our own.
Right. That's it.
Because, that's
obnoxious.
Can't take advantage of us. It's one thing not feeling comfortable. It's another thing trying to take advantage of it. And that just pisses me off. And so we did the first expo in 2016 in Denver, and it was a huge success.
How many people presented? I mean, there's a lot of people in that business, huh?
Yeah, well, at the first one, we had like 25 vendors and almost 300 people through the doors.
What kind of products were the vendors selling?
That first one, I mean, we had everything from bud bar companies to infused chefs to edible companies to a dispensary who wanted to market to that demographic. We had a bartender, we had violinists who wanted to perform at people's, a lot of it's friendly services, right? A lot of it's friendly services that is okay with cannabis, and they want the consumers to know that they're okay with it, because it's awkward for a bride to call up a photographer and say, hey, we're going to have joints that we're going to be smoking and we want pictures with them.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. If you're not comfortable with that. Yeah.
But it's awkward for the bride to even have to ask that question.
Right. Yeah. I hear what you're saying.
As someone who's called a lot of random people and said, hey, this is what I'm doing in the cannabis industry.
Yeah. It seems okay in Colorado, but once you're outside it, and maybe even within Colorado.
Yeah. I mean, it's still, you just never know how the response on the other end. Luckily, those responses are becoming, more normal than they used to be, where people were just like, what are you doing? What do you want to do? And stuff like that. But one of the biggest thing is we really found that it actually serves a major purpose, the Cannabis Wedding Expo. And we're now in 6 markets, and we're going to expand to more markets in 2022. But it provides a platform for a lot of these young service businesses to market themselves. A lot of these companies are brand new or incorporating a new element to their existing company, and they need to be able to market to this demographic. And so we actually really serve a lot of like mom and pop service companies and give them an affordable platform to advertise. And then we also serve a purpose advocating for kind of social consumption and cannabis events in these different markets, because people haven't seen a cannabis event in New York City that's legal yet, right? Now there's this opportunity for people to actually go to an event and see what the movement is all about. And people feel our show's very approachable. So we attract a lot of these newcomers into the space. And what they see is that if cannabis can be accepted at a wedding, it can be accepted anywhere. And we feel like we really display ourselves in a way which is very approachable for all walks of life. And that gives people more of an opportunity to say, hey, I want cannabis at my wedding or my event. and I'll talk to grandma about it to make sure it's okay. And people are doing that more and more. And I feel like Cannabis Wedding Expo is a driver of that conversation. And for people to actually see cannabis presented and served in this way, in which many people didn't think that it could be displayed in that way.
If I am somebody who is interested in, well, let's start with just having a cannabis dining experience, but I'm not in a legal state, what options do I have?
Come travel to Colorado.
Yeah, got to come to Colorado. That's why people, it's a good reason to go to a legal state, right? And do most illegal states have services like yours?
They're coming online, I think, chefs are more prominent than pairing dinners and stuff like that. What we do, it's not easy. It's not like this, we're just crushing, all of our weekends are booked and stuff like that. I mean, this is still being acquired by people wanting to have these experiences. And so we've been able to operate in a way that didn't have a lot of overhead.
Yeah.
And so we've been able to last for a long time. I think a lot of the people who come in, they're in and they're out because they do have a lot of overhead and they're just not making the events to cover that, unfortunately. So there's not as many as I would like to see, but it's definitely changing. More companies are coming on and doing these types of dinners, and, people are getting more, obviously lounges and restaurants are become very popular in 2022. And you're going to see that movement kind of explode quite a bit.
Yeah, I would imagine it was probably a little bit of a slow year for you, just given the pandemic and COVID, and people aren't really able to be in the same room. Not as many people were getting married. Did you do any Zoom events?
So we had to reschedule two of the Cannabis Wedding Expos, which is Vegas and Denver, which we're actually doing Vegas on August 29th and Denver on October 10th. And then we're going to have a fully loaded schedule for the Cannabis Wedding Expo in 22. So that San Francisco, LA, Boston, Toronto, Denver, Vegas, good chance of Chicago, good chance of either Jersey or New York, and also Phoenix as well. Yeah, it's going to be full on then.
And what about the dinners?
The dinners, yeah. So the dinners definitely slowed down a ton, but we started doing the dinners again this month, actually. So we started up for a little bit at the end of last summer, and then regulations changed. We had to shut it down again, and then we just opened back up as Colorado's opening up again. And so, yeah, it's fun. It's great to, it's great to do an event. And as far as the digital ones go, I didn't want to step into the virtual realm. It's just not me. I didn't want to completely change my company into like this tech company per se. And so I opted out of that, to do that, although I feel like we had some creative ideas. But I did actually just do my first virtual cannabis pairing dinner that I was approached to about, and we didn't actually have to set up the tech or the marketing of it, but I'm actually very proud of this. And we did this with the Fairmont Hotel in Berkeley, which is owned by the Fairmont properties. And if you don't know Fairmont, I mean, it's one of the biggest luxury hotel chains in the entire world. And they were doing these virtual wine dinners to support their on-site restaurant. And the head of that called me up and they wanted to do a cannabis one. And so
leave it to Berkeley to be the first, major hotel chain.
Absolutely. And this is a very iconic property, but just because they contacted, they weren't for surely going to do it. I still had to guide them to pitch it to their heads. This went all the way up the chain, this type of conversation. And so they really had to feel comfortable with it. They did. We ended up doing the event, and it was really successful, and people loved it. And, this demographic that they had, they could tell that they were almost a part of something historical. It was really beautiful to see the sense that they had being a part of that dinner because of the Fairmont Hotel's involvement with cannabis and them actually pushing it out there. And this is the first hotel that I know of. Sure, hotels have allowed events to go on their properties, but they've never produced one themselves. And so really, really proud of that. And we're actually looking at some more in-person ones right now, doing them on site. So I'll go out to the Bay and produce those, and also some potential virtual ones. And it was a very successful day, and everyone was really, really happy. I mean, getting the head public relations for the entire Fairmont hotel chain who sat in on the dinner experience, and then for them to email us 5 minutes afterwards saying how impressed they were is a pretty good feeling.
Yeah. Are you comfortable talking about prices? I mean, I'm sure it ranges all over the place.
Oh yeah, I mean, we're good with it. We offer the same experience, and so it's for a group of like 12, 14 people. We're looking at like $130 a head.
Okay, like a fine.
Our minimum amount of people will serve as a group of 6, and that's $195 a person.
And that includes the cannabis pairings, the food, everything?
Yeah, everything besides wine and stuff like that you potentially want to bring. We bring sparkling water. Sparkling water is great to clear out the palate for a tasting.
That's so cool. Good to know. All right. So if people want to use your services, tell us how they find you.
The easiest way for everyone to find us is to come to the Cannabis Wedding Expo. Cultivating Spirits shows up there, and we're in 6 different markets. So you don't have to go into Colorado to find us whenever we're doing that tour. So cannabisweddingexpo.com, cannabis_wedding_expo on Instagram. We're pretty active there. And then cultivatingspirits.com, as well as cultivating_spirits on Instagram, that they can find us. And then people want to just see more of my own personal voice, Philip_Wolf_ on Instagram. You get some different content on those platforms that you can really check out. So it's fun content to see. Not only educational, but inspiring for people as well.
Well, I will definitely subscribe. Philip, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. This is really interesting what you're doing, and I love you're blazing a new. I didn't mean to use that pun, but you're blazing a new path here.
Puns accepted.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I'm just we're just like you, John. We just want to be able to put this plant in the best light as possible, so we can open up future generations to its possibilities, and even current generations, obviously, as well. But the more that we can do right now, the better position we're going to have this plant in the future. And thank you for the work that you're doing and amplifying people's voices.
Enhance Your Life is brought to you by Wana, the #1 infused product in the U.S. Wana's entire process is designed to deliver the same great experience time after time. They have spent years fine-tuning their recipes so that their products are delicious, consistent, and potent. For more information, check out wanawellness.com. That's Wana, W-A-N-A, wellness.com.